If I had to tell you my favorite YouTuber of all time, hands down, it would have to be Tony Zaret. I mean, get real, trying liberal foods? Now that's a top 10 YouTube video of all time at least. But if I were to tell you my actual favorite YouTuber, sorry Tony, you're great, don't worry, I'd have to say video game Dunkey. Dunkey has been a constant for what I like to watch on YouTube I think as long as I've been on the site. Whether it's been commentary, gameplay, or some confusing irony that makes me laugh anyways, it's hard to name a single Dunkey video that hasn't entertained me. I believe that Dave Grohl once said that when he was making the song Everlong, he had to actually run the guitar riff by Sonic Youth, because he was worried that he may have accidentally stole one of their riffs because he liked the band so much. And sometimes I find myself worrying about that with me and Dunkey. That's how much of an influence his comedy has on me. Now, in addition to having made a successful YouTube channel, Dunkey himself has now dived into game publishing, which instantly I was very excited for. I don't mean to sell Dunkey's talents short, but I think the reason I knew that Animal Well was gonna be as good as it is because of his Rick Rubin-like position here. Yeah, I'm doing another music comparison. To paraphrase, Rick Rubin once said that he is not hired for his musical ability, but his confidence in his taste and the influence that has on artists. And I think that's the capability that Dunkey has with Animal Well. It's apparent that Dunkey isn't as involved in the development process as much as Rick Rubin is. But the point I'm making is that despite likely having no experience coding and developing games himself, Dunkey attaching his name to a project means something. Obviously, Dunkey is doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes with Big Mode, and publishing is no easy task. But the more powerful statement that Dunkey made by choosing to work alongside Billy Basso and get this game out there is that he gave it his Dunkey seal of approval. With so much clout accumulated from years of making reviews, Dunkey is saying, hey, this is damn good. And the thing is, he's right.
Okay, playtime's over. I am now putting down the bread.
With as little exposition as possible, Animal Well begins with the flash of 4 flames and you pop out of a flower as a little Goomba. After this, I instantly uninstalled the game and gave it a negative review on Steam, because they chose to rip off not 1 but 2 Nintendo franchises. Way to go, assholes! In actuality, playing as this little bean-looking guy isn't a terrible idea, because it puts more focus on the wonderful creatures around the Animal Well. In most Metroidvanias I've played, the playable character isn't usually this small, but it makes sense here because it leaves more room for the giant storks on your screen. Speaking of, visually the game's unique graphics on both the environments and animals are simply wondrous. It has hints of old Super Nintendo games, yet has such an advanced sense of lighting and texture that it's clearly a passionate blend of both old and new. I've played a few games that take similar strides in the visual department, but Animal Well's graphics and style are so particular that I couldn't help but appreciate it. Reaffirming this, Billy Basso created his own damn engine for the game. As for the story, it's very ambiguous. The narrative is simple, and it places more emphasis on atmosphere than exposition. Think Metroid Prime or Rain World. You have to find 4 magical flames around the map and put them out. And while this isn't anything we haven't seen before, it gives a little direction to your exploration and still has surprises beyond that initial fetch quest. And trust me, there are a lot of surprises. Animal Well is actually a far scarier game than I expected, and while I knew it was going to have a little bit of cartoonish horror in there, I didn't anticipate a lot of the scares that it threw my way. The soundtrack helps it achieve this as well, and while I won't play the music itself for spoilers, there were sections where the game swapped into heavy and haunting synths that literally sent a shiver down my spine. I always appreciate when a game that isn't necessarily horror isn't afraid to dabble with frightening the player. Super Mario 64, Outer Wilds, Undertale, these are not generally scary games, but they're not afraid to dip their toes in to enhance atmosphere. Animal Well didn't force the shit out of my asshole as much as games that are more blatant horror, but the fact that it took influence from the genre assuredly makes it a more diverse and creative game, and doesn't feel unfitting at all. In fact, much to its advantage, this game takes a lot of cues from Resident Evil, and if not, then definitely from games also inspired by the franchise. Often when you pick up an important item, there will soon be an adverse effect right after. There are save rooms with calming music and a telephone to lock in your progress, and of course, climbing into the mouths of weird creatures. As many of the people who have been watching my channel for a long time know, I'm not a huge fan of Resident Evil. A whole soundtrack of amazing music. I've poured so much time into Resident Evil 7. It's a great example of simple gameplay done extraordinarily well. The culmination of everything that makes Resident Evil fun. I just absolutely love this game to pieces, man. But I think utilizing some inspiration from the series is a benefit for Animal Well. Jokes aside, I think that the Resident Evil series is one of my favorites in terms of sheer design, and I can appreciate the fact that Billy Basso seemed to emulate some of my favorite parts of it in Animal Well. Similar to how Resident Evil's unusual movement and camera made the game scarier, a lot of Animal Well's creativity comes from the unusual decision to have the character have no weapons. It's a staple of Metroidvanias that powering up your character makes killing enemies easier, but in Animal Well you find an item that helps you blow fucking bubbles. How useful could that be? Very useful, actually. The majority of exciting moments regarding both tension and discovery were deepened by not allowing you to deal with everything in the most orthodox way gamers know. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there were several moments with several different items where I found a more exciting way to utilize them, to the point where I thought it was an exploit. Turns out, everything is intentional, and I ended up being encouraged to use the items in what I initially thought was a broken way. That feeling is all throughout Animal Well. This game proves to be routinely exciting, and every turn has a simple yet mind-blowing revelation for the player. Another way that the lack of combat makes for a more unique playthrough is its sheer density of puzzles. With a diverse array of tools at your hands, the game avoids the common trope of filling rooms with the same hordes of killable enemies to entertain you, and I'm fairly certain that there is at least one puzzle or secret inside each frame of the map. Don't quote me on that, please. Just don't. In being a puzzle-heavy game, despite Animal Well's extensively large map, this feels like one of the least open Metroidvanias I've played. Winding cramped corridors, blocked-off paths, and pipes that lead you to some unknown corner are quite common, and it can be difficult to try and get to a specific section of the map because of all the twists and turns. Sometimes that's a part of the fun, though. The actual map you use to navigate can feel obtuse as well due to its 16-bit art style, as it's hard to recognize which rooms are which at such a low resolution. I've played Metroidvanias with incredibly detailed maps, and I've also played ones where the map is a collection of boxes and you're just supposed to figure shit out. So Animal Well's less detailed map isn't necessarily bad, just something to note, I guess. On the upside though, this meant that I wasn't able to rely on the map as much, and I got to treat exploration as a puzzle too. And if I've learned anything about playing games for all my life, is that I should always be open to thinking more. All in all, Animal Well's rules and systems are far from clear, which may sound bad at first, but that doesn't mean discovering how the game works isn't easy. Animal Well always indulges you to push your mind further, and give even the silliest of solutions a try. You just gotta stick with it and keep experimenting. Animal Well feels like the kind of game best played on a rainy evening snuggled up in a blanket with a warm drink. Its atmosphere and sheer quality of vibe comes close to even some of my favorite game settings, like Rapture from BioShock. And while it's certainly not as novel of a concept as Rapture, it made up for it in style and tone. It's a pretty cold and worn out take to say that indie developers are where you can find the most raw passion for games in the industry, but Animal Well still solidifies its cliched truth. If you were looking to dice up beetles or shoot aliens, Animal Well is not the right experience for you right now. However, with dense, thick ambiance and copious amounts of things to discover and collect, I found Animal Well to be a refreshingly laid-back and soothing Metroidvania, even when the entire squad of animals from Tekken were chasing my ass all around the map. When noting also that Metroidvanias are quite a saturated genre, if you're already sick of them, I can't guarantee Animal Well will cure your ailment. I can say though, with confidence, that this is still a unique and imaginative game with a strong vision, and it was certainly the Metroidvania that I needed to cleanse my palate. In closing, I can't wait to see what's next for Billy Basso, and Big Mode as well. But if the next Big Mode game isn't as good as this, then let's just say I'll have to reconsider my ranking for top YouTubers.
Sploosh!